Sarah Mitchell had always been drawn to water. Growing up near the Pacific coast, she spent her childhood swimming in the ocean and dreaming of becoming a marine biologist. At 28, she worked as a civilian contractor for the Navy, specializing in underwater communication systems. Her job took her to remote military installations, where she tested equipment that would help Navy divers and SEALs communicate during dangerous missions. On a foggy Tuesday morning in September, Sarah arrived at the naval base in San Diego for what she thought would be a routine equipment test. The base was buzzing with activity as a SEAL team prepared for an upcoming mission. Sarah had worked with special forces before, but something felt different this time. The commanding officers seemed unusually tense, and several meetings were held behind closed doors. Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez briefed Sarah on the day's assignment. They needed to test new underwater communication devices in the base's training pool, which was designed to simulate real ocean conditions. The pool was 50 feet deep with artificial currents and obstacles that mimicked underwater environments where SEALs might operate. Sarah noticed that several high-ranking officials were present for what should have been a simple test. Admiral Patricia Hayes, known for her strict adherence to protocol, watched from the observation deck. Also present was Dr. Marcus Webb, a defense contractor who had been working on classified projects related to underwater warfare technology. As Sarah prepared her equipment, she overheard fragments of conversations that made her uncomfortable. The officials were discussing something about eliminating loose ends and maintaining operational security. She tried to focus on her work, but the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. The SEAL team assigned to assist with the testing was led by Chief Petty Officer Michael Chen, a veteran with over 15 years of experience. His team included Petty Officers Jake Morrison, Alex Turner, and David Kim. Sarah had worked with Chen before and respected his professionalism, but today he seemed distant and avoided making eye contact with her. The testing began normally. Sarah entered the water wearing full diving gear, including a specialized breathing apparatus that would allow her to stay underwater for extended periods. The communication devices were attached to her equipment, and she began running diagnostic tests while the SEALs monitored from both underwater and above the surface. Everything changed when Sarah discovered an anomaly in the communication system. The devices were picking up encrypted signals that weren't part of the test protocol. As she investigated further, she realized the signals contained coordinates and operational details for what appeared to be an unauthorized mission. The data suggested that someone was using official Navy resources for activities that weren't sanctioned by proper authorities. Sarah's training had taught her to document everything, so she began recording the anomalous signals using her equipment's built-in memory system. She didn't realize that her actions were being monitored from the surface, where Dr. Webb was tracking her every move through sophisticated surveillance equipment. When Sarah surfaced to report her findings, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. The atmosphere around the pool had changed dramatically. Admiral Hayes was speaking in hushed tones with Dr. Webb, while Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez looked visibly uncomfortable. The SEAL team members were positioned around the pool in a way that seemed more tactical than supportive. Sarah approached Rodriguez to report what she had discovered. But before she could speak, Admiral Hayes interrupted. The Admiral explained that there had been a change in the testing protocol, and that Sarah needed to return to the water immediately to complete additional diagnostics. Sarah felt uneasy about the request, especially given what she had just discovered, but she was a civilian contractor following military orders. As Sarah prepared to re-enter the water, she noticed that Dr. Webb was operating equipment she didn't recognize. When she asked about it, she was told it was additional monitoring gear to ensure the test's success. Chief Chen seemed increasingly uncomfortable, and Sarah caught him exchanging worried glances with his team members. Back in the water, Sarah continued her work while remaining alert to her surroundings. The SEAL team members were positioned at various depths around her, ostensibly to provide security and assistance. However, their formation seemed more like containment than protection. Sarah's years of working with military personnel had taught her to read body language and tactical positioning, and everything about this situation felt wrong. As she worked, Sarah noticed that the water pressure around her was changing in ways that didn't match the pool's normal operation. Someone was manipulating the artificial current system, creating turbulence that made her work more difficult. When she looked up toward the surface, She could see Dr. Webb operating controls that seemed to be affecting the pool's environmental systems. The encrypted signals Sarah had discovered earlier were still present, and she continued to document them despite the increasingly difficult conditions. The signals contained detailed information about a covert operation involving the theft of military technology and its sale to foreign agents. The coordinates indicated meeting points and transfer locations that clearly violated national security protocols. Suddenly, Sarah felt a strong current pulling her toward the deepest part of the pool. The artificial current system had been activated at maximum intensity, creating a dangerous undertow that threatened to trap her at the bottom. Her equipment began malfunctioning in ways that suggested deliberate sabotage rather than mechanical failure. Chief Chen and his team moved closer to Sarah's position, but instead of helping her fight against the artificial current, they seemed to be herding her toward the most dangerous part of the pool. Sarah realized with growing horror that this wasn't an equipment test gone wrong. It was a deliberate attempt to silence her before she could report what she had discovered. The communication devices that Sarah had been testing suddenly went silent, cutting off her ability to call for help from the surface. Her breathing apparatus began delivering air inconsistently, forcing her to manage her oxygen supply carefully while fighting against the artificial currents that were trying to drag her to the bottom of the pool. As Sarah struggled to maintain her position in the water, she caught sight of Admiral Hayes and Dr. Webb watching from above. Their expressions showed no concern for her safety, only cold calculation. Sarah understood that she had stumbled onto something far more dangerous than a simple equipment test, and that powerful people were willing to kill to keep their secrets hidden. The SEAL team members around her were clearly conflicted. Their training and honor demanded that they protect civilians, but they were also following orders from superior officers. Sarah could see the internal struggle in their eyes as they were forced to choose between their duty and their conscience. With her air supply becoming more unreliable and the artificial currents growing stronger, Sarah knew she was running out of time. She had to find a way to survive long enough to expose the conspiracy she had uncovered. But first, she had to escape from a situation that was designed to ensure she would never surface again. Sarah's lungs burned as she fought against the artificial currents that seemed designed to drag her to the bottom of the training pool. Her breathing apparatus sputtered and wheezed, delivering only sporadic bursts of air. She realized that someone had tampered with her equipment, slowly reducing her oxygen supply to make her drowning appear accidental. The SEAL team members surrounding her maintained their positions, but Sarah could see the conflict in their eyes. Petty Officer Jake Morrison, the youngest of the group, kept glancing toward the surface where Admiral Hayes and Dr. Webb continued their cold observation. His hands trembled slightly as he held his position, clearly struggling with orders that went against everything he had been trained to believe about protecting innocent lives. Chief Petty Officer Chen moved closer to Sarah, his face masked but his body language betraying his discomfort. Through hand signals, he indicated that she should stop resisting and allow herself to sink deeper into the pool. The message was clear. Cooperation would lead to a quicker end, while resistance would only prolong her suffering. Sarah's mind raced as she processed her situation. The encrypted signals she had discovered contained evidence of a major security breach involving the sale of classified military technology. Dr. Webb appeared to be at the center of the operation, using his position as a defense contractor to access sensitive information and sell it to foreign buyers. Admiral Hayes was either complicit in the scheme or being blackmailed into silence. As her air supply continued to diminish, Sarah made a desperate decision. She activated the emergency recording function on her equipment, hoping to preserve evidence of the conspiracy, even if she didn't survive to report it. The device was designed to withstand extreme conditions and would continue recording until its memory was full or its power source was depleted. The artificial currents intensified, and Sarah felt herself being pulled toward a section of the pool designed to simulate underwater caves. The space was narrow and confusing, with multiple dead ends that could easily trap an unwary diver. If she was forced into that area with her compromised equipment, her chances of survival would drop to nearly zero. Petty Officer David Kim positioned himself near the entrance to the cave simulation, blocking Sarah's potential escape route. But as she drew closer, she noticed something unexpected in his eyes. Not compliance with orders, but a subtle signal. Kim had served multiple tours overseas and had seen enough corruption to recognize it when it appeared in his own ranks. Kim made a slight adjustment to his position, creating a small gap that Sarah could potentially use to escape the strongest part of the artificial current. It was a dangerous move that could cost him his career or worse, but his conscience wouldn't allow him to participate in the murder of an innocent civilian. Sarah seized the opportunity, using the last of her strength to push through the gap Kim had created. The move caught the other team members off guard, and for a moment, she was free from the artificial current's strongest pull. But her victory was short-lived as Dr. Webb activated additional controls from the surface, creating new hazards throughout the pool. The water around Sarah began to heat up as thermal systems designed for environmental training were activated beyond their safe limits. The sudden temperature change would have been disorienting under normal circumstances, but with her compromised breathing apparatus, it became life-threatening. Her body's oxygen consumption increased as it struggled to adapt to the extreme conditions. Admiral Hayes spoke into a communication device, issuing new orders to the SEAL team. Sarah couldn't hear the exact words, but the team members' reactions told her everything she needed to know. They were being ordered to become more aggressive in their containment efforts to ensure that she didn't escape the pool alive. Chief Chen approached Sarah again, this time with obvious reluctance. His training demanded obedience to superior officers, but 15 years of military service had taught him to recognize illegal orders. He was being asked to murder a civilian to cover up a conspiracy that threatened national security, and every fiber of his being rebelled against it. Sarah's equipment suddenly detected movement from an unexpected direction. Someone else had entered the water, but this person wasn't part of the original SEAL team. Through the murky water heated beyond normal temperatures, she could make out the form of another diver approaching from the shallow end of the pool. The newcomer was Lieutenant Marcus Thompson, a Navy investigator who had been conducting a separate inquiry into irregularities in defense contracts. He had arrived at the base to interview Sarah about some of the projects she had worked on, only to discover that she was supposedly conducting underwater tests. Something about the situation had triggered his investigative instincts. Thompson's presence changed the dynamics of the situation dramatically. As a commissioned officer with investigative authority, he outranked most of the people involved in the conspiracy. His unexpected arrival forced Admiral Hayes to make a quick decision about how to handle the expanding situation. Dr. Webb frantically shut down the environmental controls he had been manipulating, trying to return the pool to normal conditions before Thompson could realize what was happening. But the damage was already done. The water temperature remained dangerously high, and the artificial currents continued to create hazardous conditions throughout the pool. Sarah struggled toward Thompson, hoping that his presence would provide the protection she needed to survive and report what she had discovered. But her oxygen supply was nearly exhausted, and the extreme conditions had pushed her body to its limits. She could feel consciousness beginning to slip away as her brain was starved of oxygen. Thompson quickly assessed the situation and realized that Sarah was in severe distress. He activated his own emergency breathing apparatus and moved to assist her, but the SEAL team members were positioned to intercept him. Chief Chen found himself facing an impossible choice: follow illegal orders or protect both Sarah and a fellow naval officer. The confrontation that followed would determine not only Sarah's survival but the fate of everyone involved in the conspiracy. Admiral Hayes watched from above, calculating whether the situation could still be contained or if more drastic measures would be necessary. Dr. Webb prepared to activate additional pool systems that could endanger everyone in the water, civilian and military personnel alike. As Sarah's vision began to fade, she saw Chief Chen make his decision. Instead of blocking Thompson's rescue attempt, he turned to face his own team members, prepared to protect the people he had been ordered to harm. The choice would cost him everything he had worked for in his military career, but it was the only way he could live with himself. The pool had become a battlefield where honor faced corruption, and where the lives of everyone involved hung in the balance. Sarah's survival would depend on whether there were enough people willing to choose what was right over what was ordered, even when that choice could destroy their own lives. Lieutenant Thompson reached Sarah just as her consciousness began to slip away. Her lips had turned blue from oxygen deprivation, and her body had gone limp in the artificially heated water. Thompson's emergency training kicked in as he activated his backup breathing apparatus, and placed the mouthpiece against Sarah's lips, forcing precious oxygen into her lungs. Chief Chen's decision to protect rather than harm created a domino effect among his team members. Petty Officer Morrison, already struggling with the illegal orders, moved to assist Thompson in bringing Sarah to the surface. The young SEAL had joined the Navy to protect his country and its people, not to participate in murder conspiracies orchestrated by corrupt officials. Dr. Webb watched the rescue effort with growing panic from the pool's control station. His carefully orchestrated plan to eliminate Sarah was falling apart, and the evidence of his crimes was still stored in her recording equipment. He began frantically operating controls to create new hazards in the pool, hoping to cause an accident that would eliminate all the witnesses to his conspiracy. Admiral Hayes grabbed Webb's arm, stopping him from activating systems that would endanger the naval personnel in the water. Even in her corrupt state, she understood that harming active duty SEALs would bring unwanted attention from higher authorities. The situation was spiraling beyond their control, and they needed to shift to damage control mode rather than continue their assassination attempt. As Thompson and Morrison brought Sarah to the surface, she regained consciousness long enough to whisper a single word: recording. Thompson understood immediately that Sarah had evidence of whatever had led to her near drowning, and he needed to protect both her and that evidence from the people who had tried to kill her. Petty Officer Turner, who had remained conflicted throughout the incident, finally chose his side when he saw Sarah's condition. Her near death had been no accident, and he realized he had been part of an attempted murder. Turner positioned himself between the rescue team and the other officials, prepared to prevent any further attempts to harm Sarah. Dr. Webb made a desperate attempt to retrieve Sarah's equipment before it could be examined by investigators. He claimed that the devices contained classified technology that needed to be secured immediately, but Thompson recognized the attempt for what it was: an effort to destroy evidence. The lieutenant ordered the equipment to be placed in investigative custody, effectively protecting the proof of the conspiracy. Admiral Hayes quickly shifted into crisis management mode, declaring that Sarah had suffered an equipment malfunction during routine testing. She ordered the pool area to be sealed, and all personnel to sign confidentiality agreements related to the classified test that had taken place. The Admiral hoped to contain the situation by classifying the entire incident. Sarah was rushed to the base medical facility, where Navy doctors worked to stabilize her condition. The extreme heat exposure and oxygen deprivation had pushed her body to its limits, and she drifted in and out of consciousness while receiving treatment. During her lucid moments, she tried to tell the medical staff about the conspiracy, but her words were dismissed as confused rambling from someone who had nearly drowned. Lieutenant Thompson remained at Sarah's bedside, both to monitor her condition and to protect her from any further attempts on her life. He had worked enough investigative cases to recognize a cover-up in progress, and he knew that Sarah would remain in danger as long as the conspirators remained free and powerful. Chief Chen faced immediate consequences for his decision to protect Sarah. Admiral Hayes relieved him of duty pending an investigation into his failure to follow orders during a classified operation. The chief knew his military career was over, but he had no regrets about choosing honor over corruption. He voluntarily submitted to questioning by Thompson, providing crucial testimony about the illegal orders he had received. Dr. Webb worked frantically to contact his associates and warn them that their operation had been compromised. The conspiracy involved more than just the theft of military technology. It was part of a larger network selling classified information to foreign governments. Webb's panic led him to make mistakes that would eventually help investigators unravel the entire operation. The other SEAL team members found themselves in impossible positions. Petty officers Morrison and Turner had chosen to side with Thompson and Chen, effectively ending their careers in special operations. Petty Officer Kim, who had provided Sarah with the small opportunity that saved her life, tried to maintain plausible deniability while secretly cooperating with the investigation. Admiral Hayes called an emergency meeting with base security to coordinate the cover-up effort. She claimed that Sarah had suffered an accident during equipment testing and that any rumors to the contrary were threats to national security. The Admiral used her authority to classify all aspects of the incident, making it illegal for anyone to discuss what had really happened in the pool. Sarah's condition slowly stabilized, but doctors were concerned about potential long-term effects from her oxygen deprivation. More importantly for the conspiracy, she retained clear memories of what had happened and was determined to expose the truth once she was strong enough to act. Her equipment had indeed recorded evidence of the illegal activities, creating a time bomb that threatened to expose everyone involved. Thompson began a careful investigation, knowing that he was up against powerful people who had already tried to commit murder to protect their secrets. He started by examining Sarah's equipment and documenting the evidence it contained. The encrypted signals she had discovered revealed the scope of the conspiracy and identified additional participants who hadn't been present at the pool. Dr. Webb made his first major mistake when he tried to access Sarah's equipment while it was in investigative custody. His attempt to tamper with evidence was caught on security cameras, providing Thompson with proof that the incident had been more than a simple equipment malfunction. Webb's panic was making him careless, creating opportunities for investigators to gather evidence. The base commander, Colonel Patricia Williams, became suspicious when Admiral Hayes tried to classify routine equipment testing procedures. Williams had not been part of the conspiracy, and she began asking questions about why a simple test required such extreme security measures. Her inquiries forced the conspirators to expand their cover-up efforts, creating more opportunities for mistakes. Sarah's near-death experience had created a crisis that the conspirators were struggling to manage. Their original plan had been simple: eliminate the witness and continue their illegal activities. Now they faced exposure from multiple directions, with naval investigators, base security, and potentially federal authorities all becoming interested in what had really happened during the routine equipment test. The SEAL team members who had chosen honor over corruption found themselves under investigation by the same people they had defied. Admiral Hayes used her authority to recommend court-martial proceedings against Chen, Morrison, and Turner for failure to follow lawful orders. The admiral hoped that threatening their careers and freedom would pressure them to remain silent about what they had witnessed. As Sarah fought to recover from her injuries, the battle lines were drawn between those who sought truth and justice and those who would do anything to protect their criminal enterprise. The pool incident had been intended to eliminate a threat to the conspiracy, but instead it had created new enemies and exposed the corruption to honest members of the military who were committed to stopping it. 3 days after her near drowning, Sarah woke up in the base hospital with a clearer mind and a burning determination to expose the truth. The oxygen treatments had helped her brain recover from the deprivation, and her memories of the incident were crystal clear. She knew that powerful people had tried to kill her, and she understood that she remained in danger as long as they were free. Lieutenant Thompson had maintained a protective presence near Sarah's room, using his investigative authority to limit access to her. He had discovered that several people had attempted to visit Sarah under false pretenses, including a doctor who turned out to be one of Dr. Webb's associates. Thompson's vigilance had prevented what could have been another assassination attempt disguised as medical care. Sarah's recorded evidence had revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. The encrypted signals contained details about 12 separate transactions involving the sale of classified military technology to foreign buyers. The network included defense contractors, military officers, and civilian employees who had been systematically looting America's most sensitive technological secrets for over 2 years. Dr. Webb's panic had led him to make increasingly desperate moves. He had attempted to delete computer files, destroy documents, and even intimidate witnesses who might testify against him. Each action created more evidence of his guilt and helped investigators map the full extent of his criminal network. Webb's associates began distancing themselves from him as his behavior became more erratic and dangerous. Admiral Hayes found herself caught between protecting her own involvement and managing the expanding investigation. She had received kickbacks from Webb's operation in exchange for providing access to classified facilities and protecting his activities from scrutiny. Now she faced the choice of coming clean and cooperating with investigators, or doubling down on her criminal activities. Chief Chen had been placed in the base detention facility pending his court-martial, but he used his time to provide detailed testimony to Thompson about the conspiracy. Chen's military record and reputation for integrity gave weight to his accusations. and his willingness to sacrifice his career for the truth impressed other personnel who had remained silent about suspicious activities they had witnessed. The SEAL team members who had helped save Sarah found themselves under intense pressure from the conspiracy's supporters. Petty officers Morrison and Turner were offered deals, keep quiet about what they had seen, and their careers could be saved. But both young men had been raised with strong moral values, and they refused to participate in covering up attempted murder. Sarah's equipment had captured more than just encrypted communications. The devices had also recorded underwater conversations between SEAL team members, revealing the conflict many of them felt about their orders. This evidence proved that the drowning attempt had been premeditated and that multiple people had knowledge of the plan to kill Sarah. Colonel Williams, the base commander, began her own parallel investigation when she realized that Admiral Hayes was trying to classify routine activities to prevent scrutiny. Williams had 30 years of military experience and could recognize corruption when she saw it. She started quietly gathering information about unusual activities and unexplained security classifications. Dr. Webb made a critical error when he tried to flee the country with stolen technology hidden in diplomatic pouches. Airport security detected anomalies in his luggage, leading to his arrest and the discovery of classified military equipment. Webb's attempt to escape provided concrete proof of his espionage activities and validated everything Sarah had reported. Sarah's recovery progressed steadily, but she remained under protective custody due to continued threats against her life. Anonymous messages had been sent to the hospital threatening her and her family if she continued to cooperate with investigators. Thompson traced some of these threats back to associates of the conspiracy, providing additional evidence of obstruction of justice. The investigation expanded when federal authorities became involved. The FBI's counterintelligence division had been tracking some of Webb's foreign contacts as part of a separate espionage investigation. Sarah's evidence provided the missing pieces that connected domestic corruption to international intelligence operations, dramatically increasing the stakes for everyone involved. Petty Officer Kim, who had quietly helped Sarah during the drowning attempt, finally came forward with crucial testimony. Kim revealed that Admiral Hayes had held secret meetings with Webb and other conspirators, planning ways to eliminate threats to their operation. Kim's inside knowledge helped investigators understand the full chain of command involved in the conspiracy. The base hospital received orders to transfer Sarah to a civilian facility, supposedly for specialized treatment. Thompson recognized this as another attempt to remove Sarah from protective custody and make her vulnerable to elimination. He blocked the transfer and demanded that any medical decisions be made transparently with full documentation. Sarah's family became aware of the situation when her sister received threatening phone calls warning her to convince Sarah to stop cooperating with authorities. The threats against innocent family members demonstrated how desperate the conspirators had become and how far they were willing to go to protect their secrets. Dr. Webb's computer files revealed the names of foreign intelligence agents who had been purchasing American military technology. The stolen information included advanced communication systems, underwater detection equipment, and tactical software that gave enemy nations significant advantages over U.S. forces. The scope of the damage to national security was staggering. Admiral Hayes attempted to use her influence with Pentagon officials to shut down the investigation. She claimed that continued scrutiny would damage military readiness and compromise ongoing operations. However, her own involvement in the conspiracy had been detected by federal investigators, and her attempts at interference only provided more evidence against her. The conspiracy had reached into civilian defense contractors across multiple states. Companies that had been trusted with some of America's most sensitive projects had been infiltrated by foreign agents or corrupted by the promise of illegal profits. The network was larger and more dangerous than anyone had initially realized. Sarah's determination to seek justice grew stronger as she learned more about the scope of the conspiracy. She understood that her near drowning had been just one attempt to silence someone who threatened a massive betrayal of American military secrets. The knowledge that foreign enemies had gained access to classified technology because of this corruption fueled her resolve to see everyone involved brought to justice. Lieutenant Thompson's investigation had grown from a simple inquiry into a contractor irregularity to a major counterintelligence operation involving multiple federal agencies. The evidence Sarah had provided served as the foundation for a case that would eventually expose one of the largest espionage rings in recent military history. The SEAL team members who had chosen integrity over corruption found unexpected support from other military personnel who had been watching the situation develop. Their courage in standing up to illegal orders inspired others to come forward with information about suspicious activities they had witnessed but hadn't previously reported. As Sarah prepared to provide formal testimony to federal investigators, she knew that her ordeal was far from over. The people who had tried to kill her still held positions of power and influence, and they would continue to view her as a threat to their freedom and their lives. But she also knew that truth and justice were worth any personal risk she might face. 2 weeks after Sarah's near drowning, federal agents descended on the naval base with search warrants that sent shockwaves through the entire command structure. Special Agent Rebecca Martinez from the FBI's Counterintelligence Division led a team of investigators who had been building cases against foreign espionage networks for months. Sarah's evidence had provided the breakthrough they needed to expose the domestic side of an international conspiracy. Dr. Webb's arrest at the airport had triggered a cascade of investigative actions. His encrypted devices contained contact information for foreign intelligence operatives, payment records for stolen technology, and detailed plans for future thefts of classified military equipment. The scope of his betrayal was breathtaking. He had sold information that compromised American military operations around the world. Admiral Hayes made a desperate attempt to destroy evidence by claiming that certain documents were classified beyond the investigators' clearance levels. However, Special Agent Martinez had obtained authorization from the highest levels of government to access any materials related to the espionage investigation. Hayes's attempts at obstruction only added to the charges building against her. Sarah provided detailed testimony to a grand jury that was considering indictments against multiple conspirators. Her technical expertise helped investigators understand exactly what information had been stolen and how it could be used against American forces. The encrypted signals she had recorded contained evidence of transactions that dated back nearly 3 years, revealing a systematic looting of military secrets. Chief Chen was released from detention when federal investigators determined that his actions had helped prevent a murder and preserve crucial evidence. Instead of facing court-martial, Chen became a key witness in the federal case. His detailed knowledge of how the conspiracy operated within the military hierarchy proved invaluable to prosecutors building their cases. The investigation revealed that the conspiracy had reached into the highest levels of military procurement. Several generals and admirals had received payments in exchange for steering contracts to compromised companies and providing access to classified facilities. The corruption had affected military readiness by ensuring that inferior equipment was purchased, while superior alternatives were blocked from consideration. Sarah's sister Maria received protection from federal marshals after the threats against her escalated. The conspirators had begun targeting family members in an attempt to pressure Sarah into recanting her testimony. Maria's phone records showed calls from numbers traced to foreign intelligence services, proving that the conspiracy extended beyond American borders. Dr. Webb attempted to negotiate a plea deal by offering to identify his foreign contacts and reveal the full extent of the espionage network. However, his credibility was undermined when investigators discovered that he had provided false information in his initial statements. Webb's desperation led him to make increasingly wild claims about other officials, some of which proved to be fabrications designed to deflect attention from his own crimes. Lieutenant Thompson's investigation had uncovered evidence that the conspiracy had been operating for much longer than initially suspected. Financial records showed suspicious transactions dating back 5 years, suggesting that the network had been systematically penetrating American military technology development from its earliest stages. The damage to national security was far more extensive than anyone had imagined. Petty officers Morrison and Turner found themselves celebrated as heroes for their role in saving Sarah's life and preserving evidence of the conspiracy. Their courage had inspired other military personnel to come forward with information about suspicious activities they had witnessed. The culture of silence that had protected the conspiracy began to crumble. As more people chose integrity over self-preservation, federal investigators discovered that several foreign governments had been competing to purchase American military technology through Webb's network. Countries that were supposed to be allies had been secretly acquiring classified information about U.S. capabilities and sharing it with potential adversaries. The betrayal extended beyond simple espionage to include diplomatic deception at the highest levels. Sarah's recovery progressed to the point where she could return to work, but her role changed dramatically. Instead of testing communication equipment, she became a consultant to federal investigators, helping them understand the technical aspects of what had been stolen. Her expertise proved crucial in assessing the damage and developing countermeasures to protect remaining classified technologies. The conspiracy had used legitimate military exercises and training operations as cover for their illegal activities. Equipment tests like the one where Sarah nearly died had been used multiple times to provide access to classified facilities and create opportunities for technology theft. The abuse of military resources for criminal purposes added additional charges to the growing list of offenses. Admiral Hayes's financial records revealed a lifestyle far beyond what her military salary could support. Expensive homes, luxury cars, and offshore bank accounts provided clear evidence of corruption. When confronted with this evidence, Hayes finally agreed to cooperate with investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence, providing crucial testimony about how the conspiracy operated at senior levels. The SEAL team that had been present during Sarah's near drowning became the subject of an intensive investigation to determine who had knowledge of the murder plot. While Chen, Morrison, and Turner were cleared of wrongdoing, other team members faced potential charges for following illegal orders and participating in attempted murder. Dr. Webb's business associates began turning against each other as federal investigators applied pressure through raids and arrests. The conspiracy had involved dozens of people across multiple companies and government agencies. As the network unraveled, each arrest led to new evidence and additional suspects, creating a snowball effect that exposed the full scope of the operation. Sarah received death threats that were sophisticated enough to suggest professional involvement. The messages contained specific details about her daily routine and security arrangements, indicating that foreign intelligence services were actively monitoring her activities. Federal protection for Sarah was increased as the threats escalated in both frequency and credibility. Congressional oversight committees began their own investigations into how such an extensive espionage network could operate undetected for so long. The failure of existing security measures had allowed foreign agents to penetrate some of America's most sensitive military programs. Senators and representatives demanded answers about systemic weaknesses that had enabled the conspiracy. The investigation revealed that some of the stolen technology had already been incorporated into foreign military systems. American soldiers deployed overseas were now facing enemies who possessed detailed knowledge of U.S. capabilities and tactics. The real-world consequences of the conspiracy extended far beyond financial losses to include direct threats to military personnel in combat zones. Special Agent Martinez coordinated with international law enforcement agencies to track down foreign operatives who had received stolen American technology. Several arrests were made in allied countries, but some key figures had fled to nations that didn't have extradition treaties with the United States. The international scope of the investigation complicated efforts to bring all conspirators to justice. Sarah's equipment continued to provide evidence as investigators analyzed its complete data storage. The devices had captured not only the encrypted communications that initially exposed the conspiracy, but also environmental data that proved the artificial conditions in the pool had been deliberately created to endanger her life. The technical evidence supported her testimony about the murder attempt. As the federal investigation intensified, it became clear that Sarah's near drowning had been just one element of a much larger criminal enterprise. The conspiracy had threatened national security, corrupted military institutions, and cost taxpayers millions of dollars in stolen technology and compromised equipment. The full accounting of the damage would take years to complete, but Sarah's courage in preserving evidence had made justice possible. 6 months after Sarah's near drowning, the federal courthouse in San Diego became the center of one of the largest espionage trials in American history. Dr. Marcus Webb, Admiral Patricia Hayes, and 17 other defendants faced charges ranging from espionage to attempted murder. The prosecution team, led by U.S. Attorney James Harrison, had assembled a case that would expose the full extent of foreign infiltration into American military programs. Sarah took the witness stand on a Tuesday morning in March, her voice steady as she recounted the events that had nearly cost her life. The courtroom was packed with reporters, military officials, and family members of the defendants. As Sarah described discovering the encrypted signals and realizing she was being deliberately drowned, several jurors visibly reacted to the calculated nature of the murder attempt. The defense attorneys had prepared aggressive strategies to discredit Sarah's testimony. Webb's lawyer, Marcus Sterling, suggested that Sarah had misinterpreted routine military communications and that her near-drowning was simply an equipment malfunction during a classified test. However, the technical evidence from Sarah's recording devices made such explanations increasingly difficult to maintain. Chief Petty Officer Chen's testimony proved devastating to the defense. His detailed account of receiving illegal orders to contain Sarah in the pool, combined with his description of the artificial environmental conditions, painted a clear picture of premeditated attempted murder. Chen's military record and reputation for honesty gave his words tremendous weight with the jury. The prosecution revealed that Dr. Webb had received over $3 million in payments from foreign intelligence services over a 4-year period. Bank records showed transfers from shell companies controlled by Chinese and Russian operatives, with payments timed to coincide with major technology transfers. Webb's lavish lifestyle had been funded entirely by betraying his country's military secrets. Admiral Hayes' cooperation with prosecutors had provided crucial insights into how the conspiracy operated at senior military levels. Her testimony revealed that several Pentagon officials had been compromised through blackmail, bribery, or ideological conversion. The corruption extended far beyond financial gain to include systematic efforts to weaken American military capabilities. International law enforcement agencies provided evidence about foreign operatives who had been arrested in connection with the conspiracy. Intercepted communications showed that enemy intelligence services had prioritized obtaining American underwater warfare technology, viewing it as crucial to their own military development. Sarah's work had been specifically targeted because of its strategic importance. The trial revealed that the pool incident had been planned weeks in advance. Webb had identified Sarah as a threat after she began asking questions about anomalies in communication systems during previous tests. The decision to eliminate her had been made collectively by the conspiracy's leadership, with Admiral Hayes providing the authority to use military personnel and facilities for the murder attempt. Petty officers Morrison and Turner testified about the moral conflict they experienced. When ordered to participate in what they realized was an assassination, their decision to help save Sarah instead of following illegal orders demonstrated the importance of individual conscience in preventing criminal activities, even when those activities were ordered by superior officers. The defense attempted to portray the defendants as patriots who had been entrapped by foreign agents, but financial evidence contradicted these claims. The conspirators had actively sought out opportunities to steal and sell classified information, often targeting specific technologies that foreign buyers had requested. Their activities were motivated by greed rather than coercion. Sarah's sister Maria testified about the threats their family had received, providing evidence that the conspiracy had continued its intimidation efforts even after federal charges were filed. Phone records and surveillance footage showed that foreign agents had maintained pressure on witnesses throughout the investigation, demonstrating the international scope of the criminal enterprise. The prosecution presented evidence that stolen American technology had already appeared in foreign military systems. Intelligence analysts testified that enemies now possessed detailed knowledge of U.S. underwater detection capabilities, forcing the military to develop expensive countermeasures and modify operational procedures. The cost of the betrayal extended far beyond the stolen equipment to include billions in defensive adaptations. Dr. Webb made a dramatic attempt to claim that he had been working as a double agent, feeding false information to foreign intelligence services with government approval. However, investigators quickly debunked this claim by demonstrating that the stolen technology was genuine and had provided real advantages to enemy forces. Webb's desperation was evident as his lies unraveled under cross-examination. The trial exposed systematic failures in military security protocols that had allowed the conspiracy to operate undetected for years. Background investigations had missed financial irregularities. Communication monitoring had failed to detect unauthorized contacts with foreign agents, and oversight procedures had been circumvented through the conspirators' positions of authority. Admiral Hayes broke down while testifying about how she had been gradually drawn into the conspiracy. What began as small favors for Dr. Webb had escalated into major security breaches as she became increasingly compromised. Her emotional testimony revealed how foreign intelligence services had exploited personal weaknesses to turn trusted officials against their own country. The prosecution demonstrated that Sarah's near drowning was just one of several planned eliminations of people who threatened the conspiracy. Other witnesses had died in apparent accidents or had been transferred to assignments where they couldn't investigate suspicious activities. The pattern of witness elimination showed the conspiracy's willingness to commit multiple murders to protect their operation. Lieutenant Thompson testified about his investigation and the obstacles he faced from corrupt officials who tried to classify evidence and block his inquiries. His persistence in protecting Sarah and pursuing the truth had been crucial to exposing the full scope of the conspiracy. Thompson's dedication to justice impressed the jury and reinforced the credibility of the prosecution's case. The international implications of the case became clear when foreign government officials were called to testify about their country's involvement in purchasing stolen American technology. Some nations claimed they had been unaware that the technology was stolen, but intelligence intercepts revealed that several foreign governments had specifically requested particular types of classified information. As the trial progressed, public attention focused on the broader question of how to prevent similar conspiracies in the future. The case highlighted vulnerabilities in America's military technology protection systems and raised questions about whether current security measures were adequate to defend against sophisticated foreign intelligence operations targeting military contractors and government officials. The evidence presented during the trial painted a picture of a conspiracy that had threatened not only individual lives but also national security on a massive scale. Sarah's courage in preserving evidence and testifying despite continued threats had made it possible to expose a network of betrayal that reached into the highest levels of military leadership and extended across international borders. The jury deliberated for 3 days before returning with verdicts that sent shockwaves through military and intelligence communities worldwide. Dr. Marcus Webb was found guilty on all charges, including espionage, conspiracy, and attempted murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, citing the massive damage his betrayal had caused to national security and the callous attempt to murder Sarah. Mitchell Admiral Patricia Hayes received a sentence of 35 years in federal prison after being convicted of espionage, conspiracy, and abuse of authority. Her cooperation with prosecutors had resulted in a reduced sentence, but the judge emphasized that her betrayal of the oath she had sworn as a military officer warranted severe punishment. Hayes showed no emotion as the sentence was read, but her family wept in the courtroom gallery. The remaining 17 defendants received sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years, depending on their level of involvement in the conspiracy. Several lower-level participants who had provided testimony against the leadership received more lenient sentences, while those who had remained defiant throughout the trial faced the full weight of federal sentencing guidelines. Sarah's testimony had been the cornerstone of the prosecution's case, and her courage in preserving evidence despite nearly dying had made justice possible. After the verdicts were announced, she was approached by representatives from multiple government agencies offering positions in counterintelligence and security consulting. Sarah's experience had given her unique insights into how foreign agents penetrated American military systems. Chief Petty Officer Chen was quietly reinstated to active duty with full honors, and his record was cleared of any negative notations related to his initial detention. The Navy recognized that Chen's refusal to follow illegal orders had upheld the highest traditions of military service. He was eventually promoted and assigned to a position training other SEALs about ethical decision-making in complex situations. Petty Officers Morrison and Turner became advocates for military ethics training, speaking at bases around the country about the importance of individual conscience in preventing criminal activities. Their decision to choose right over wrong, despite pressure from superior officers, inspired a new generation of military personnel to understand that some orders should never be followed. regardless of the consequences. The investigation's revelations led to comprehensive reforms in military security protocols. New oversight procedures were implemented to monitor defense contractors more closely, and background investigations were enhanced to detect financial irregularities that might indicate foreign influence. The changes were designed to prevent future conspiracies from achieving the level of penetration that Webb's network had accomplished. Sarah decided to accept a position with the Department of Defense as a special advisor on technology security. Her role involved developing new methods to protect classified military research from foreign intelligence services. Sarah's near-death experience had given her a personal understanding of how far enemies would go to steal American secrets, and she was determined to prevent other families from facing similar threats. The international ramifications of the case continued for years as allied nations investigated their own military technology programs for signs of compromise. Several countries discovered that they had unknowingly purchased stolen American technology through intermediaries connected to Webb's network. The revelation strained diplomatic relationships and forced a global reevaluation of military technology sharing agreements. Lieutenant Thompson was promoted to lieutenant commander and assigned to lead a new Navy unit focused on investigating internal security threats. His persistence in protecting Sarah and pursuing the truth had demonstrated the importance of having dedicated investigators who couldn't be intimidated or corrupted by powerful interests. Thompson's unit became a model for other military branches seeking to prevent similar conspiracies. The trial's coverage in national media sparked public debates about military security and the vulnerability of American technology to foreign theft. Congressional hearings examined how the conspiracy had operated undetected for so long, and what additional measures were needed to protect classified information. The case became a cautionary tale about the constant vigilance required to defend national security. Sarah's family gradually returned to normal life as the threats against them ended with the conviction of the conspirators. Maria Mitchell, Sarah's sister, had been deeply affected by the intimidation campaign and decided to pursue a career in law enforcement to help protect other families from similar experiences. The conspiracy's impact extended beyond its immediate victims to inspire others to dedicate their lives to justice. Dr. Webb's foreign contacts were systematically tracked down and arrested through international cooperation agreements. Several foreign intelligence officers were expelled from the United States and allied countries, while others faced prosecution in their home nations for unauthorized espionage activities. The network's destruction severely damaged foreign intelligence capabilities targeting American military technology. The military equipment that had been compromised by the conspiracy was systematically replaced or modified to eliminate the advantages that foreign nations had gained. The cost of these defensive measures exceeded $2 billion, representing just a fraction of the true damage caused by the betrayal. New technologies were developed with enhanced security features to prevent future theft. Sarah received numerous awards for her courage and service to national security, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom. During the White House ceremony, she dedicated the honor to all the military personnel who had chosen integrity over corruption, emphasizing that individual moral courage was the ultimate defense against conspiracy and betrayal. The case established important legal precedents for prosecuting espionage conspiracies that involved both civilian contractors and military personnel. Future prosecutors would use the Webb case as a template for building comprehensive cases against complex networks that threatened national security. The legal framework developed during the prosecution became a standard tool for counterintelligence investigations. Years later, Sarah often reflected on how a routine equipment test had exposed one of the largest espionage operations in American history. Her decision to document the encrypted signals she discovered had seemed like simple professional diligence at the time, but it had ultimately saved countless lives by preventing foreign enemies from gaining even greater advantages over American military forces. The SEALs who had participated in the conspiracy's exposure became symbols of military honor and integrity. Their story was taught in military academies and ethics courses as an example of how individual choices could have enormous consequences for national security. The principle that illegal orders must be disobeyed regardless of the personal cost became a central theme in military leadership training. The pool where Sarah nearly died was eventually converted into a memorial garden honoring military personnel who had died, protecting classified information from foreign enemies. The memorial served as a reminder that the price of freedom included constant vigilance against those who would betray their country for personal gain. Sarah often visited the memorial to honor the memory of others who had paid the ultimate price for their integrity. The conspiracy's exposure led to a new era of cooperation between military and civilian law enforcement agencies in protecting national security. The lesson learned from the Webb case was that modern espionage threats required coordinated responses that crossed traditional jurisdictional boundaries. Sarah's survival and courage had not only saved her own life, but had also strengthened America's defenses against future threats to its most vital secrets.